Look at the Middle East today. Missiles streaking across the night sky, embargoes crippling economies, endless, brutal proxy wars, tearing nations apart. Every time you turn on the news, the narrative is the same. But what if I told you that the headlines, the political analysts, and the breaking news alerts are all missing one massive, hidden piece of the puzzle? What if the conflict you are watching right now isn't modern at all? What if the military strategies and geopolitical maneuverings dictating the fate of the world today were actually written over 2,000 years ago? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the world's most misunderstood nation. The truth is, the ancient Persian Empire never actually died. It just evolved. It went into the shadows. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly how the ghost of an ancient superpower is secretly pulling the geopolitical strings of the 21st century. The geographical fortress. To understand the mind of modern Iran, you have to forget the arbitrary borders drawn by politicians in the 20th century. You have to look at the earth itself. Geography is destiny. And for this land, geography is both a formidable fortress and an eternal curse. Look at the map. The Iranian plateau is a colossal citadel of stone and sand. To the west, you have the towering, jagged peaks of the Zagros Mountains, acting as a massive, natural wall against invaders from the Arab world and the Mediterranean. To the north, the impenetrable Alborz Mountains block the path from Russia and Central Asia. To the east, unforgiving, scorching deserts that swallow armies whole. Because of this geography, nobody can easily invade the heartland. It is a bunker built by nature, but there is a fatal flaw in this fortress. While it keeps enemies out, it also traps you inside. The central plateau is arid. It lacks the massive, fertile river valleys of Egypt or Mesopotamia. If you live inside this fortress and you want to grow, if you want immense wealth and power, you cannot just sit behind the mountains. You have to break out. You have to control the trade routes, the water sources, and the buffer zones surrounding you. This geographical reality birthed a mindset of necessary expansion. It is the exact same geographical paranoia that drives their foreign policy today. But thousands of years ago, it birthed something much larger. It birthed the first true global superpower, the rise of the ultimate machine. Enter Cyrus the Great. Most history books treat Cyrus as just another ancient conqueror with a big army. But that completely misses the genius of what he actually built. Cyrus didn't just build a military, he built a psychological machine of assimilation. He understood a fundamental rule of power that modern empires are still struggling to grasp. You do not conquer a people by violently crushing their culture. You conquer them by co-opting it. When Cyrus marched into the great city of Babylon, he did not burn it to the ground. He didn't slaughter the priests or destroy the temples. Instead, he freed the slaves, including the Jewish people, earning him a place of honor in the Bible. He respected the local gods. He told the conquered people, pay your taxes, provide soldiers, and you can keep your religion and your way of life. This was revolutionary. He built the Achaemenid Empire not just with the edge of a sword, but with psychological mastery. At its height, this empire stretched all the way from the Balkans in Eastern Europe to the Indus Valley in India. It controlled an estimated 44% of the entire human population. Let that sink in. Nearly half of all human beings alive on planet Earth answered to one single throne. They built the Royal Road, an ancient superhighway that allowed messages to cross the empire in days instead of months. They created a universal currency. They laid the blueprint for how to run the world. But when you build an empire that vast, when you control half the world, you paint a massive, bloody target on your back. The Great Illusion. Persia versus Iran. Now, Here is a historical secret that will completely change how you view this region. The word Persia is an illusion. It is a Western invention. The people who lived there never actually called their country Persia. To them, for thousands of years, it was always Iran, which translates to the land of the Aryans. So why does the history we learn call them Persians? Because the West wrote the history books we read, and the West inherited its worldview from the ancient Greeks. The Greeks were the bitter, blood rivals of the empire. They named the entire massive empire after just one single southern province, Pars. Imagine if the rest of the world decided to call the entire United States of America Texas, and refused to use any other name for 2,000 years. That is exactly what happened. The Western world adopted the Greek label, but the internal identity of the people remained purely Iranian. This naming discrepancy isn't just a fun fact. It represents a deep, fundamental disconnect between how the West sees them and how they see themselves. The West sees them through the lens of ancient Greek propaganda as the chaotic, exotic enemy from the East. But internally, they see themselves as the civilized center of the world. And that worldview was about to face its ultimate nightmare, the trauma of the accursed. In Western history, there is one man who stands above almost all others as the ultimate hero, a visionary, a military god among men. Alexander the Great. We name cities after him. We make epic movies about his conquests. But if you cross the Zagros Mountains and read the ancient texts of the people he conquered, Alexander is not the Great. He is Alexander the Accursed. He is the ultimate villain. When Alexander conquered the empire, he didn't just defeat an army. He burned the magnificent, sacred capital city of Persepolis to the ground. He destroyed centuries of art, literature, and religious texts. He shattered their universe. This was not merely a military defeat. It was a profound, world-shattering psychological trauma. The burning of Persepolis ingrained a permanent, burning lesson into the cultural DNA of the nation. The West is chaotic. The West is destructive. The West cannot be trusted. If you want to survive in a hostile world, you cannot rely on treaties or the goodwill of outsiders. You must rely entirely on your own strength, and you must push the enemy as far away from your borders as possible. This isn't just ancient history. You cannot understand the modern Middle East without understanding the ashes of Persepolis. This exact same trauma response, this deeply ingrained paranoia of Western destruction, is the exact same psychology driving their controversial nuclear program and aggressive foreign policy today. The ancient empire fell, but the mentality of the empire survived. It just went underground, waiting for the right moment to rise again. The blueprint of proxy warfare. After the collapse of Alexander's short-lived empire, the fortress of Iran eventually rose again. First came the Parthians, and then the Sassanids. But they woke up to a new, terrifying reality. There was a new superpower in the West, the Roman Empire. Rome had the greatest, most disciplined infantry the world had ever seen. The Roman legions were an unstoppable meat grinder of shields and short swords. So, how do you defeat an enemy that is vastly superior to you in head-to-head combat? You don't fight them head-on. You change the rules of the game. You fight them in the shadows. The Parthians realized that matching Roman infantry was suicide. Instead, they invented a new style of asymmetric warfare. They used light cavalry and archers. They invented the famous Parthian shot, where a warrior would pretend to retreat, riding away on horseback, only to suddenly turn around in the saddle and shoot arrows backward into the pursuing enemy. But the Parthian shot wasn't just a battlefield maneuver. It became a broader geopolitical philosophy. You don't fight the superior enemy in a decisive, winner-take-all battle. You bleed them. You exhaust them. You fight them on the edges of your territory. Turning their strength into a weakness, you make the cost of conquering you so incredibly high that they eventually give up and go home. Does that strategy sound familiar? It absolutely should, because what the Parthians invented over 2 millennia ago is the exact blueprint for modern proxy warfare. Today, modern Iran faces the United States and its regional allies. They are looking at enemies with vastly superior military budgets, air superiority, and technology. They know that a direct, conventional war would be devastating. So, what do? How does a modern nation utilize the ancient Parthian blueprint to control entire countries without ever officially declaring war? The answer lies in a brilliant, terrifying strategy called forward defense, and it is tearing the Middle East apart, piece by piece. The masterpiece of forward defense. Think about the fundamental rule of survival if you live in a fortress. You never want to fight the enemy in your own courtyard. You want to fight them outside the walls. This is the absolute core of modern Iran's geopolitical playbook. It is called forward defense, and it is a masterpiece of asymmetrical warfare. Instead of spending billions trying to build conventional armies and fleets of fighter jets to match the United States or Israel, a race they know they would lose, they took a completely different path. They exported their defense. Look at the map of the Middle East today. Look at Lebanon. Look at Syria. Look at Iraq. Look at Yemen. What do all these places have in common? They are the battlegrounds of Iran's proxy network. By funding, training, and equipping local militia groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen, Tehran has successfully pushed its borders hundreds of miles outward. If a conflict breaks out, the bombs do not fall on Tehran or Isfahan. They fall on Beirut, Damascus, or Baghdad. The Iranian leadership is essentially playing a massive game of chess, using allied militias as pawns to keep the kings and queens of the West entirely occupied away from the Iranian homeland. It is the ancient Parthian shot, modernized for the 21st century. You bleed your enemy from 1,000 cuts, all while maintaining plausible deniability. You make the region so volatile, so incredibly expensive to operate in, that the Western empires simply lose the political will to stay. Building the modern Royal Road. But this network of proxies is not just about defense. It is about fulfilling an ancient ambition. Remember the Royal Road built by Cyrus and Darius? That ancient superhighway allowed the Persian Empire to project power all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. Fast forward 2.5 millennia, and look at what Iran is trying to build today. Political analysts call it the Shia Crescent, or the land bridge. Through a complex web of alliances, political influence, and sheer military force, Tehran has essentially carved out a continuous corridor of control, stretching from the borders of Afghanistan straight across Iraq and Syria, all the way to the Mediterranean coast of Lebanon. For the first time in centuries, the rulers of the Iranian plateau have unhindered access to the Mediterranean Sea. They can move weapons, personnel, and resources across the Middle East without ever putting them on an airplane or a vulnerable cargo ship. They didn't achieve this by sending massive conquering armies like ancient Rome. They achieved it by exploiting the chaos left behind by American interventions and regional civil wars. They waited for the dust to settle, and then they quietly, methodically, built a modern empire in the shadows. The nuclear deterrent and the ghost of Alexander? Now, let's address the elephant in the room. The one issue that dominates every single diplomatic conversation, every United Nations summit, and every military threat regarding this nation, the nuclear program. Why is Iran so obsessed with enriching uranium? Why would they willingly endure decades of crippling economic sanctions, international isolation, and the constant threat of military strikes? just to spin centrifuges in underground bunkers. Western media often portrays this as an irrational desire for destruction. But if you look at it through the lens of Iranian history, through the trauma of Alexander the Accursed, the logic becomes terrifyingly clear. For centuries, Iran has been invaded, exploited, and partitioned by foreign powers. The British Empire extracted their oil. The Russian Empire stole their northern territories. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Saddam Hussein unleashed horrific chemical weapons on Iranian soldiers, and the international community largely turned a blind eye. To the minds of the Iranian leadership, the world is fundamentally hostile, and international law is a myth designed to protect the strong. In their eyes, there is only one absolute guarantee of sovereignty in the modern world. There is only one shield that can permanently stop a Western invasion: the ultimate fortress, a nuclear deterrent. Whether they actually build a bomb or just remain perpetually on the threshold of building one, the message to the world is the same. The destruction of Persepolis will never happen again. We will make the cost of invading us so apocalyptic that no one will ever dare to try. The internal earthquake, the two Irans. But here's the twist. While the government in Tehran projects the image of an invincible, expanding empire abroad, the fortress is cracking from the inside. There is a massive, fundamental disconnect happening right now, and it involves the very soul of the nation. You see, there are two Irans. There is the regime, the Islamic Republic, born from the 1979 revolution, whose ideology is built on strict religious rule and anti-Western resistance. And then, there is the population. The people of Iran are overwhelmingly young, highly educated, and incredibly connected to the outside world. And more importantly, they are deeply, fiercely proud of their ancient heritage. For the regime, history began with the arrival of Islam. But, for millions of ordinary Iranians, their true identity traces back to Cyrus the Great. When you see massive protests erupting in the streets of Tehran, when you see young women risking their lives to defy the morality police, you are not just seeing a political dispute, you are witnessing a battle for the identity of civilization itself. The youth are looking back at the Achaemenid Empire, an empire famous for its tolerance, its respect for different cultures, and its incredible advancements in human rights. And they are looking at their current reality. The contrast is unbearable. The ghost of ancient Persia isn't just influencing the government's military strategy, it is fueling the rebellion of its own people. The final twist. We started this journey by looking at the chaos of the modern Middle East. We looked at the missiles, the proxy wars, and the geopolitical chess games. But the real story of Iran is not just about the weapons they build or the militias they fund. It is the story of a civilization that refuses to die. Empires rise and empires fall. The Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, the British, they all came to this colossal fortress of stone and sand. They all tried to break the spirit of the plateau. And yet, the Iranian identity survived them all. The Persian Empire didn't vanish into the history books. It transformed. It adapted to the brutal realities of modern survival. The strategies of Cyrus and the Parthians are alive and well, operating in the shadows of the 21st century. The next time you see a news headline about the Middle East, remember the geography. Remember the trauma of Persepolis. Remember the Shadow Empire. Because the ancient game is still being played, and the board is the entire world. If this deep dive completely changed how you see history and modern geopolitics, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. We are decoding the hidden forces shaping our world every single week. And I want to hear from you. Do you think the modern strategy of forward defense makes Iran untouchable? Or is the internal rebellion their ultimate undoing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.